I want to talk about social anxiety. I've always considered myself someone who has undiagnosed social anxiety. And what I mean by social anxiety is just feeling a level of uncomfortability socially when you're out in public or you're around people. My self-esteem was so low as a little girl that I was terrified. When I say terrified, I mean terrified socially. I grew up with my friends. I had my close friends, and I was, with them, and if you saw me around them, I looked very outgoing. When I was in school, in the classroom, I was outgoing. I ran for class president, so my social anxiety didn't hit those areas because that was my comfort zone. But when you're talking about, going outside, and hanging around other people who were not my friends, because around the 8th grade, my friends left. They moved back south. And I was left to say, who do I hang around? And I was so fearful of being around other people because I was teased a lot growing up, either being too tall, whatever, just teased a lot. And I developed a social anxiety. And that's what led me to part of what led me to my drug use, just masking that anxiety. I had it so badly that I lived in a 16th floor building in New York City. And before I would come outside, I would go down the stairs and I would peek out the window to make sure that there wasn't a crowd there. Because if there was a crowd there, I would go up the stairs and go around to the other side of the building and looking out and seeing if anybody was there. And if they were, I would head right back upstairs to my house. I remember, we were bused to a school in a different neighborhood. And this is a middle school. There was a 6th grade bus. There was a 7th grade bus. And then there was an 8th grade bus, the seniors. I remember I was in the 6th grade and my sister and brother, they was in 7th grade. And this particular day, I was late and I missed my bus. But they allowed, you to go on the 7th and 8th grade bus if you missed your bus. I can remember crying. And we had like bars you could see right through. And I remember just holding on to the bars and just begging my mother not to send me downstairs to get on that 7th and 8th grade bus. I was screaming as if somebody was attacking me because that's how it felt inside. The thought of getting on that bus around peers who I didn't normally socialize with, being around peers who I thought was just in a whole different world than me. In my mind, they were older, they were the more popular, and I didn't feel that I was going to be accepted. It felt like torment. And my mother didn't let me stay home. So I got on that bus. I can't remember how I felt on the bus. I just remember that traumatic moment of this fear of not wanting to get on that bus. There was another time in my life when I was old enough to go downtown Brooklyn, and that's when we went down there to go shopping. And I remember even getting on the train with just such anxiety. Now, this is all before my drinking and drug use, so I didn't have anything to medicate that feeling. So when I got on the train, oh my God, I would just grab a seat. And the fear before I got on the train was that I hope I got a seat, because if I didn't, then I would have to stand up. And I just felt like all eyes were on me, that people were, going to laugh at me. That was my fear. People were going to laugh at me. And I couldn't tolerate that. I really, really couldn't. And so when I did get on the train, I would sit there and my head would be so still, and I would, be afraid to look to my left, to my right, for fear of making eye contact, because I didn't feel good about myself. When I did get off the train, and before I would go into the stores, I would look and see if that store was crowded. And if there was a crowd in that store, I wouldn't go in. Even if it was a favorite store that I loved, and, because the train ride from where I lived in Brooklyn, was near Coney Island and Bensonhurst, to downtown Brooklyn was probably 40-minute ride, I'm thinking. Something like that, 45-minute ride. So during this ride, I anticipated going into one of my favorite stores, and when I got there and it was crowded, I wouldn't go into my favorite store. I would go to another store for fear that people would be staring at me. And when people talk about anxiety and that feeling, I understand that feeling of anxiety. You feel so terrified. And this anxiety of mine lasted for a long, long time. There's moments even now that I'll experience anxiety, but I'm far better. I'm far better because I'll go to places and I'll socialize and I'll talk to people. But there's still those moments that kick me back to my childhood. And I have to kick myself back up to my adulthood by sharing affirmations to myself, by telling myself, Natalie, you're worthy and you're valuable and you have a lot to say. It was difficult for me to have a conversation with people. I didn't know what to say. And I was afraid of, being stuck just sitting there like, what do I say? And just feeling like nobody wanted to talk to me. So why go? I was the one that people didn't want to talk to and socialize or connect with. I grew up with such internal turmoil regarding that, that I sabotaged a lot of my successes. So recovery helped me a great deal. Counseling helped me a great deal of learning to mend those broken pieces and to figure out where this thought I had of low self-worth that caused such anxiety in my life, that it caused me to live a pretty much isolative life. When people see me out there, I can look outgoing, but there's moments that it depends on who I'm around and the personality of the person. It has a way to trigger my subconscious back to who in my mind was teasing me. And I'm going to say a lot of the anxiety, it was self-created. Because I had a lot of self-loathing, self-hatred, that I ran scripts in my head of how I wasn't worthy and how nobody wanted to be around me and how scared I was. Most of it was in my head more so than outside. It's just that when you feel low self-worth and you run those negative thoughts in your head, you presume, you think that this is what's really going on the outside. And it becomes your reality when the reality is that, there's sometimes, people, are cruel and mean, but most of it was in my head. So I had to change the thoughts in my head about me. And over the years, I began to tell myself that I was worthy. I began to tell myself, how much I had to offer and how intelligent I was and how kind I was and how passionate I was. And if that somebody was gifted to be around me, they were blessed because I was, I had so much to give. Another part of this social anxiety that made it even worse is because it gave people the wrong impression about me. It gave people the impression that I was very standoffish. And I didn't want to be bothered. So people got the wrong impression of me, not understanding what I was experiencing was social anxiety, that I was afraid, that I was terrified. So if I stayed to myself, I didn't have to run the risk of those feelings being triggered by being around other people outside of my comfort zone. So I kept myself safe, you know, and it has been challenging years, you know. I thank God for recovery, whatever you want to call it. I thank God for counseling. I thank God for whatever it is that helps you mend your broken pieces, because I had to change what wasn't reality and not what was irrational thinking about who I was. I had to change that, because that wasn't the reality. That's not the reality of who I am. I am this wonderful, vivacious, you know, intelligent, engaging, lovable person. And that's the truth of who I am, you know. And I share with people times, you know, about this, you know, little Natalie and big Natalie. And little Natalie is that little girl who didn't feel good about herself. Little Natalie is that broken little girl who was afraid and lived with a level of anxiety and lived in this world in her head that continued to repeat the story of how she wasn't good enough. And thank God for big Natalie, who stopped and said, we're going to get some help with this. We're going to go into recovery, because this is what I want to get to. Recovery is not just putting down the drugs. Recovery is recovering my place in God and living the life of who God says I am, and not what my past says I am, because it kept me in bondage. And I've been able to work my way out of it. And again, there's still some residue of that broken little girl inside of me that kicks up. But I'm prepared with tools. I'm prepared with affirmations. I'm prepared with self-talk. I'm prepared with real life evidence of the greatness and the beautifulness that I am. You know, and yeah, in terms of other people, I can remember people telling me every now and then that, Natalie, I didn't know you were such a cool person, because before I got to know who you are, I had all these thinking about you, and that's their irrational thoughts. But yeah, I had to fight through it, and still fighting today, but it doesn't overtake me anymore. It doesn't. It's just a thought, and I tell myself stop, and I let it go. I let it go, because I know the truth of who I am. You know, so I wanted to bring you into that world of social anxiety and how it affected my life. And I wanted to share that with you, because on this Motivational Monday, I know that there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing those feelings now of such anxiety that they remove themselves from the population in order not to feel those feelings of inadequacy and self-hatred and self-loathing. And to you, I want to speak to you that you can develop tools, you can develop things that help motivate you to push beyond those feelings. And no, it's not easy, but it's possible. You just have to keep doing it. You have to keep coming up with tools. And having said that, you know, my show, A Woman's Worth, is all about that as well. It's all about finding our worth as women. And this applies to men too, but I just generally speak to women. That's my niche, that's my passion. And that's what that vehicle of A Woman's Worth Blab Show is about, is to mend those different areas that have been broken. You know, that's my motivational speaking career, is to help transform lives. That's where the transformational speaking part comes in it, because I do want to motivate people. I do want to inspire people with my story, but with my words. But more so than anything else, I want to transform lives. I want to transform your thinking. So you want to allow those thoughts that debilitated you, that kept you stuck and in bondage, to stop you from living a life that you know that you should be living. You know, I want to get you motivated by sharing this video, by sharing other things in my platform on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, you know, on LinkedIn, to help give you the tools to move past that place of stuck. Because change is possible.